Laura, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much. Pleasure to have you here. Today, obviously, just to kind of set the scene a little bit, we're talking about a few things. So product, women in tech, and ITV. So three things that I'm pretty confident you have some good opinions on and some good things to say about. Do you want to just kind of give a bit of an overview and kind of high level what you do at ITV in your role?
Yeah, sure. And good morning. Nice to be here. Even though for us it's relatively early,
Yeah.
but possibly not the nice thing about podcasts, right? You can listen to them whenever you want.
Yeah.
So I'm Director of Product at ITV, the UK kind of broadcaster streamer, and one of a few directors of product across different areas. But my focus is on our content supply chain, which I like to think of as this really straightforward pipeline of content going from the people who have ideas and do things like, come up with the deals, make the contracts, then make the programs, which is the amazing bit. And then it has to flow through a whole bunch of processes before it turns up on someone's screen via either our broadcast channels or our streaming platform, or indeed never on those and sent through to kind of clients around the world where things are broadcast on lots of different platforms around the world. So there's lots of technology underpinning that kind of content supply chain, as you can imagine, more than I realized when I joined, because I came from a digital publishing background, building out content management systems and things. So it's a very complex world that we're focusing quite a lot on making simpler and more automated where we can. There are strong needs for humans in lots of parts of that process, but there are quite a lot of pieces of data or video files or other audio, other things that can and should just kind of flow through. So different teams across a portfolio working across that content supply chain, and trying with a focus on making things more automated where we can, making things simpler where we can, and really bringing out the kind of the human value in managing exceptions and thinking about kind of clever ways to do things rather than having to, and I kid you not, put one piece of data into 4 different systems, for example.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so I'm going to read you a line here. My passion lies in fostering a culture that empowers people to excel and innovate.
That sounds good. Did I say that?
Yeah, that's taken directly from your LinkedIn bio. So as somebody who's in a leadership role, taking into consideration what I just said there, how do you do that? How do you foster a culture that empowers people to excel and innovate, particularly at somewhere like ITV, which is, big organization, but also from, I guess, from where you come from before as well.
Yeah, and we always overstate things in our LinkedIn bios, right? Who knows which AI wrote that? No, I'm kidding. So I think the culture is really important, right? Whether you're in a big team or a small team, in a big company or a small company. And I have mostly been in quite big enterprises, so my experience is more in those and in kind of startups and things like that. I'm sure there's a similar view there. I think some of it is I've always been very focused on kind of building the teams and maybe protecting's not the quite the right word, but being a part of supporting them when there are challenges, but giving people the freedom within their roles to try things out, to make mistakes. That you can't stop everybody from making mistakes, but you can sometimes be a buffer to the consequences of that, maybe, particularly if you've allowed them the freedom and then maybe things didn't go quite how we expected. You can't then throw them under the bus and be like, oh, that was them, right? Because A, that's really unfair, and B, they'll never make an effort again, because why would you try, why would you take risks if you were totally just worried about what might happen, or indeed worried that if it went really well, your boss would just take the credit,
Yeah.
because that doesn't make you want to innovate either. If you're not even going to get any credit for it, there's an analogy. There's an analogy in a book I was forced to read on a leadership course years and years ago, but actually had to admit some of it was quite useful in the end, around the mirror and the pane of glass. And it was all about, like, if you want to be a good kind of team leader, when things are going well, they were referencing somebody who had an office. I've never actually had an office, but they were saying when things go well, you should be looking out the window of the door or whatever at the team going like, yay, well done, and shining all the attention on them. And when things are going badly, you should be looking in the mirror and saying, what can I do differently to change this for everyone? Where a kind of maybe a different kind of manager might do it the other way around, and spend a lot of time blaming if things are going wrong and spend a lot of time taking the credit if things are going well. So I hope, I cannot, it's not for me to say really, but I would always try to be the other way around. I try and champion the skills and the successes and the learnings of the people I'm working with, but also try and deflect a little bit if there are challenges and not let that necessarily all land on them all the time, because they've probably got quite a lot of work to get on with. So hopefully that's how time, space and protection. Doesn't always work. I'm sure there are plenty of people who could give you examples of when I hadn't quite got that balance right. But I think also carving out, especially in a technology world, carving out time and space for people to be able to spend on learning and development sounds really cheesy, but it's such a big thing. And I think especially, it's probably true in every role, right? But I, spent so long in a technology world, I don't know that much different. There's so much to keep up with and learn about and experiment with. But if you just expect people to do that in their own time, they're not necessarily going to have any time. If you take the infamous 20% time, which is actually just 20% more work time, then fine. If you're a multinational conglomerate that can pay enormous wages, then maybe that works. But I think in a normal world, some of it is about carving out that time for people to experiment and try things and maybe have a bit of fun and learn stuff, because everybody is lifted then. That learning comes in different ways. We're trying out, and I'm not going to take credit for this, it was driven by the engineering managers in our bit in content supply. We have a thing every other week where it's a couple of hours in the morning, and we call it like airplane mode, because you can turn everything off, no meetings. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean people like me have no meetings, but we have significantly fewer. But for the teams themselves, they can turn off their email, they can turn off their Slack. Nobody's kind of allowed to book meetings. Team meetings have all been shifted out of that particular fortnightly cadence, and the time is to be spent on kind of, is there something you want to learn about? Actually, is there a work problem that you think there's another way to solve, and you just want a bit of time to have a go and do an experiment and prove it either way? Or we have, access to, well, everybody does on the internet, but online learning resources where you can do kind of qualifications and things like that. So spending that time really trying to bring us all up. It's getting quite good feedback. We're not getting too much pushback from outside of our world, because the work is being planned around it, so it shouldn't ever hold anything up. But it is coming up where people are kind of trying new things out and going, we could try this technology to do something, or they're doing a qualification or whatever else. I got a bunch of work done. It was amazing. I did all my mandatory training. I now know about all the things that we have to do as part of the being an employee. That's been quite a good one. And the director of engineering is setting up, I think they're quarterly like innovation days, where again it's maybe pick a theme, and who knows, maybe it'll be AI. Pick something.
Probably.
Yeah, you think it's a bit like saying, we'll do some coding. It's like, yes, it's what it means to an end. And go after something, or you have a few different teams looking at different things, and that can be another way of just trying to carve out the time, because it's so hard when people have enough to do kind of in the work that we've already set out as part of the roadmap, or that's coming in through support or whatever else, to be able to just have a bit of headspace to think about different ways to solve a problem that aren't maybe just doing what we do now or using what we have now simply because there's no time to do anything else.
And that's the way it's always been done.
Yeah, and it can help to step away from that, right? Which is part of kind of encouraging people to do maybe external training. Is it go to a conference? Is it join a webinar? Just hear from people maybe outside the industry, because the problems to solve in things like software are often very similar, or even in product and business across industries, the problems have similarities. And hearing how, I don't know, an engineering firm that makes maybe a physical product approaches a different it approaches in a different way a similar problem,
Yeah.
I think can be really useful.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's quite an interesting point as well, right? And one that's probably not spoken about, or that I don't hear spoken about a lot, is that you can certainly take inspiration and even kind of, I guess inspiration is probably the right word here, from other sectors, from other business lines, from other units, from other departments in ITV that maybe have no
Totally.
relevance to product and what you do. Like you just said, right? Good example, a hardware business. You still, you still have program managers, project managers, you still have BAs, you still have people solving problems, whether it's content supply, whether it's a HR system, whether it's a piece of machinery. The,
Yeah.
the the complex thinking behind it is still relevant.
Yeah, totally. And like I've spent quite a lot of time in the, I don't really know what to call it, but like digital media, digital publishing world. So um websites and everything else, but reasonably big ones, and spent a lot of time coming from an editorial background and then building tools for the editorial teams to publish onto sites, and spending quite a lot of time trying to establish the parallels where people were like, I don't understand this whole agile working thing. What does that mean? It's like, well, if you're a news team, right? What do you do first thing in the morning? You get together and you talk about what are the headlines, what are the things we want to follow up. You allocate the work and say, have you finished that thing from yesterday that we were going to publish today? I now need you to go investigate this, right? You check in on the stats and say, what content is trending, what things should we be writing about, what's tanking, what should we not bother with, and then you set that cadence for the day, or depending on what kind of publication you're on, right? That's really similar to an agile team that's getting together in their daily meeting in the morning, looking for blockers, looking at what's on for today, looking at how that applies to the roadmap as a whole. How are we progressing through the work that we'd set for ourselves for whatever length of time, call it a sprint, call it a fortnight, whatever. How are we progressing towards it? There's loads of parallels in the way people approach very different pieces of work, but because everything has its own terminology and its own words, it can feel very alien.
Yeah,
And if you can, I spend quite a lot of time, let's call it moaning, that I can't understand the title of a Jira ticket, right? I don't want to spend my life in Jira. The teams don't want me to spend my life in Jira. No good comes of that. But if I literally can't understand what the backlog is because of the way that things are phrased and terminology used, maybe they're using abbreviations, acronyms, whatever, that just makes it harder. I think if we can overcoming some of those communication barriers, suddenly what you're doing makes more sense to the people on whose behalf you're doing it,
yeah,
and you can start to build that picture of the narrative of where are you trying to get to and why, importantly, not just where are you going but why, and try and bring it. You're never going to get 100% agreement across all things, but if there's a bit more understanding, it can be easier for at least people to understand maybe why you're not doing something, why something isn't the P1 that they think it is, priority one that they think it is. I'm guilty of that too. Everything I put in is always a priority one, even when it isn't. And just try and kind of keep that communication going.
yeah. So in terms of the original question, there's quite a lot to take away and digest from that. There's a few things. So the mirror and the pane of glass. I've never really heard that before, but it's such a simple concept, and I think it can be hugely powerful, especially if the team feel that there's a mirror and a pane of glass as well, right? You don't need to go out shouting about when you're taking on the burden of the team
Oh
underperforming
God,
or
no.
missing KPIs, but if they know that, I think that's quite a powerful thing to have. I've just never heard that before, and that'll definitely stick with me. That's pretty cool. Airplane mode. So that's a really interesting concept, and it's something that I think some companies try to adopt, but maybe they don't do it so well, or the team just are so swamped that they just the idea of
Mm.
airplane mode is like a fantasy because they don't want to fall behind on their job and stuff like that. At ITV, when you have airplane mode every couple of weeks, is it specifically, you can go and learn about a thing, you can go and join a webinar, but is it all to benefit them in their role, or can it be something completely unrelated to their job?
So just to be clear, it's our bit of ITV, right? It's the content supply technology area, which is, I think, eight teams. I mean, it's more designed around professional development and learning. So it should really be things that are helping you in your role in some way. And maybe it's, you know, helping you to push it in a certain direction or something else. But I think we wouldn't normally expect it to be used to just as kind of personal time. It's very much professional development time.
Go and get a PT qualification.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would love to use it to go to a yoga class, right? But and that might in many ways help me get through the day, but that's not quite what we need.
You mentioned a few things as well when you was answering that question, and the theme that I took from that, what I've written down, is vulnerability. So as a leader, admitting when maybe you haven't got something right. I think that's quite a powerful trait for a leader to have as well, right? So you're not this kind of perfect leader that has to be right all the time and that has to be like this shining example of this is how things are done. Because you mentioned a moment ago about giving the team freedom to make mistakes and freedom to experiment. And I think probably as a leader, that's a top-down effect, right?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, anybody who thinks that they have all the answers or that they're always right is either I'm just going to name someone who runs a large US corporation. I think I might won't do that. Is either a megalomaniac or deluded, because none of us do, right? Now you can be right a fair bit of the time based on experience you've already had and things like that, but it's no guarantee that it'll be every single time. And I think being a little bit honest about that and being able to say, like, I don't know, we're gonna try this and it might not work, and I'll happily take the blame if it doesn't, because I pushed it in that direction, but it's still just a guess, right?
Yeah.
It's still just a guess. I'm glad, and it's one of the reasons I would never be like in the medical world, because you have to be pretty sure you're going to be right on some of that stuff. The consequences are a bit more serious than in the kind of worlds I've been in. But yeah, I think it's very much, and again, some of this is probably idealized, but just trying to be honest with people and trying to give people a chance who in their, in their role, I can't code. I don't know about the technology. I don't understand the intricacies of how LLMs work, but I trust that people do,
Yeah.
and who will do different things differently and understand things differently, and that's fine. And I try and stick in my lanes, and add value there and help others add value as we go along.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. And on just sticking on the ITV thing, in terms of the kind of the transformation, the big projects and programs of work that are going on there, there's a huge modernization project going on with legacy content right now, right? So everybody knows ITV, or I assume everybody listening or watching this
The
podcast
UK
knows that.
audience tend to. Internationally, they don't until you explain some shows that ITV Studios have made, and then they're like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, in the
Mhm.
UK, one of the nice things, having worked at places before that maybe didn't have mass brand recognition, is you don't have to explain where you work. Like, people still don't know what product does, and that's fine. But at least I then don't have to go through an explanation of the company beforehand.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. So in terms of the kind of the modernization and the legacy content piece that you and I spoke about previously, do you want to give a bit of an overview on that? Because that to me is monumental piece of work.
Yeah, it's quite a cool piece of work, and it's being done by kind of media rights holders across the world who still have physical media. So we have and I think the BBC have done something very similar in the last few years, and as have others. But ITV has an amazing archive of physical content. So content still on different kinds of videotapes. Don't ask me to name all of them because I can't remember. But also the kind of actual film, physical film canisters, the round ones that you
Yeah, yeah.
think of when you think of, well, you're probably not old enough, but when you think about old movies and they used to kind of put them on and turn them on.
I've seen it in
So
films.
yeah, oh, isn't that sweet? I've seen it in real life, but that was a long time ago when everything was black and white. So we have an archive building up in Leeds, and which still holds a lot of that legacy content. ITV's been around for 70 years this year, so that it goes back a long way. We've been digitizing as we go along for donkey's years. The archive team are amazing and have been working through that. And obviously anything new that's coming in is digital files, right? We're not getting sort of posted or have videotapes rock up on motorbike couriers anymore. But what we wanted to do was move to having a digital archive of that content. So we're working with a partner who specializes in that. We get the tapes to them, they're doing the digitization, and we're obviously, there's a huge process of validation to make sure that the digital asset is the same as the tape asset, and everything is as we think it is, which will take a couple of years, but we've got 6 figures worth of tapes being digitized in that time, and it is pretty amazing technology, just in terms of being able to, how you can have them all running at once and all that kind of thing. It's quite cool.
Yeah.
But there is also an argument for keeping, certainly not an argument, there's around keeping things like some of that physical film. I mean, that's a historical artifact, that's not just a piece of content. And so that, I think, will always stay, although it will be digitized as well. We would want to keep, I think, I don't make those decisions on behalf of ITV, but I think that we want to keep that kind of that historical media, because it is, especially some of the films and things that are in there.
Piece of history, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely a piece of history. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in there, especially when you think of ITN, the news arm, and the kinds of things that have been filmed over the years, or sports and things like that, some of which we still have in there. So it's very cool. I quite like that. And there's still something quite special about a physical media. But obviously, as she says, while being part of running a program that's digitizing, but also good to have it like forever. Physical media does not last forever.
Do you have a VHS player at home?
I do not. I have lived through that era where I did. I am quite grateful that I do not anymore, because and I was trying to explain, I have teenage children. I still do have cassette tapes, just because I've never thrown them away. I don't actually have a tape player, but I've still got like all the mixtapes that my friends made me, because I have terrible taste in music. So everybody made me mixtapes to try and, make me a good music person. But I was trying to explain to them about having to, like, when it all came out, and having to spool it back with a pencil to get it all back in the tape. And they're just kind of holding them and looking at them like, what is that? And it's like, well, but I've still got them. They're still
It's the
here.
whole floppy disk thing as well, right? You can get an emoji for a floppy disk, but like when I was in school, that was the thing. You'd have a floppy disk and you put it in your blazer pocket and it'd fit perfectly in the inside pocket. But now, like, my nieces and my cousins who are like coming up to 20 years old, they're like, oh, you've got a printout of the thing emoji. I'm like, no, it's actually a real thing. We used it. It's real. It's got stuff on there. But the laptops and the computers just don't take them anymore.
And you can't, well, and even CDs and DVDs now, you're hard pressed to actually. I think I found a bunch of CDs where they used to, when you got your photos developed, they'd also give you the CD of all the prints. Like, well, that's great, but I haven't got a laptop that will let me see them, so I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with it. But then you can't throw it away, because that would be too much.
The noise that some of them laptops used to make that had the little CD portable bit that would pop out, and then it starts.
You could keep your hands warm though at the side with the wires going out.
Very innovative. Awesome. So one really important and key topic I wanted to talk to you about was women in tech. So I actually first came across your profile because of the Wonder Woman conference, which is a brilliant name. I'd never heard of it before.
Great merch as well. It's the best merch when you've got stuff with Wonder Woman on it. Wonder Woman.
Yeah, brilliant. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole and I looked at the things on your profile and I clicked through and see that some of the other media on there, and it was really, really cool. But for the context of this, do you just want to explain a little bit about the conference and kind of the panelists and what the environment was like?
Yeah, no, that it was really cool. It was new to me, I confess, as well. I came across it because there are different kind of staff networks at ITV, and one of them is the Women's Network, and a couple of the members flagged that they were going to Wonder Women Live, which again, I mean, like, what are you doing today? I'm going to Wonder Women Live. Just the greatest thing to be able to say.
Brilliant.
So we went, very, very, very reasonably priced conference as well, I have to say. And it was started up by this woman called Rhea Hebden, who is in the media world, and it is a media focused kind of organization, I guess, but it was still relevant. But I'd never been to a conference before where every single panelist, every single speaker, and every single member of the audience was female. It was amazing in lots of ways, but some great stories too, focused kind of around women in media, that, you know, that's where a lot of it was coming from. But some of the stories, there was an Olympic athlete there was a woman, a young woman who's a singer, and that kind of thing as well. So like it was really interesting, and just hearing different kinds of experiences from women at different levels, different ages, different life experiences. It was, you kind of think, is it going to just be really kind of pink and cheesy? There were a lot of pink balloons, which was also really nice. But actually we came out, it did feel quite empowering, just to be able to kind of share stories and think about things differently, and maybe in a way that you might not in a mixed environment. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, that was a good one. It was really interesting. I'm now a huge fan of Anita Rani, because she was the kind of after lunch, what do they call it, fireside chat type keynote. And absolutely fascinating. I didn't really know that much about her, and I'm now like a proper fan.
How many attendees, roughly speaking, do you think there were?
Well, we filled the kind of auditorium in the BFI, so quite a few, 500,
Yeah.
maybe 1,000.
So every speaker, every panelist, every attendee, all female.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. I mean, in terms of a conference like that, when you say, you know, you've got singers, Olympic athletes, women from business, from tech, from all different kind of, I guess, environments, it does make for a really interesting concept as well, because like you just said a moment ago there, you kind of think about things differently because of the overwhelming female population in that event, right? So rather than it being a mixed event, I just wonder, because I've never obviously been in an environment like that, I just wonder kind of how powerful that was, and especially for you as well, you know, like a woman in business, woman in tech, coming away from that, it's definitely something that you would shout from the mountaintops about, the Women Wonder Woman
I think it
conference.
was good. I mean, I think it's always interesting, and can be controversial around whether you want kind of single gender events like that. I still think there are strong benefits to, in industries where it may still be more challenging to rise through or even get in, um, depending on kind of who you are, where you're from, that kind of thing. So helping people build those networks. There was a piece around kind of almost thinking about your own career differently and things like that, which, you know, maybe they would work in a mixed environment, I don't know, but they really worked in that one. And particularly maybe for the younger women around, give them that confidence to kind of push on and keep going and be brave and all that. But I suspect it was true for everyone. I don't think that's age limited. So I think there was, and you know, I met women from ITV that I'd never met before. It's a big place. I find I meet people at external events more easily than, because you don't talk to someone you bump into in the office that you don't know necessarily, but you do if you bump into them at an event, because you're like, oh look, we're both from the same company. Who knew?
Yeah.
So actually met people that I hadn't met before, which was really interesting, from like regional news and things like that. That I had there's no way I would have bumped into them.
Yeah.
So that was good. And I think there is something. They also do, the Wonder Women organization also do a mentoring program for kind of women coming into various aspects of media, matching them up with other people and stuff, which again, very useful, good thing to do.
Somebody at a conference that I went to on Wednesday made a comment that said the conference was AI and wealth, or AI and wealth tech. And the comment was only 3% of AI engineers globally are female.
Interesting.
3%.
Which it answers a lot around why you get some of the responses you do from AI, right? Because the bias you build in. men aren't necessarily biased, but a lack of diversity in the input is going to probably result in a lack of diversity in the output.
It's that unconscious bias, right? You're talking from experiences. So if you've got 20 white middle-aged British men, they're all in high-powered exec jobs in the UK, for example, you can probably have a good stab at it that they're going to have similar experiences. It wouldn't be that far wide reaching from an experience point of view, right? So the bias that exists there is pretty obvious. And I think that was the point that they were making on the panel as well, is that the bias that exists isn't purposeful, but I mean, it's there. And the bias just doesn't know what it doesn't know, right? Because it doesn't have the context and the wherewithal to be able to understand reasoning too well at the moment from that perspective.
Yeah, it's an interesting world. A slightly terrifying one when you become so used to being able to lean on things like AI as well.
Mm.
But just to, summarize this, take some notes from this,
Mm.
and then have to remember to go back through and check that it hasn't kind of hallucinated something into the middle that you may regret if you forward on and claim it as your own work, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Although I always have a brackets created in partnership with whatever AI service you want to use. Yeah,
Brilliant.
well, I like to think of it as a partnership rather than it just telling me what I should be doing.
Yeah. Copy paste. ITV do a pretty good job though, especially at that leadership level, because you were telling me that it's a 50-50 gender split on the board. The CEO's female. So,
CEO's female, yeah, I think it's slightly under. I looked it up this morning, having made bold claims. I think it's possibly 6-5, but it's pretty even split at board level. And I don't know what the percentages are as you kind of move through, but it's certainly never felt, and this is obviously only coming from my own life experience, like a place where there are massive barriers in the way, all the kind of staff networks and things like that's a very proactive place for its employees, which is nice. And I think that's changing I hope changing in business culture across the board, in different industries. Certainly, I mean, having worked for a while now, it's significantly different culture than it was in the 90s, for example.
yeah.
Which is, I think, probably a good thing. But yeah, that life is not set up in one way, and so different opportunities come and go. And things like childcare and other kinds of caring leave, actually it's not just children that you end up caring for, can hit disproportionately in across the workforce. So I think it's flexibility about those things and being proactive about that, just wanting to have, like you say, different, we shouldn't stereotype anyone, right? And there could be people in that group you described who have had different kinds of life experiences. It might not be obvious at first, but it's that making sure that you bring just a diversity of thinking, people coming at things from different angles, because otherwise you will solve every problem the same way, instead of somebody going, we could do this, right? And everybody going, could we? Like,
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. And yeah.
That is an interesting concept. And you were telling me before that there's fairly proactive programs that encourage career progression across the different groups in ITV, right?
Yeah, so I think the staff networks are really good. And I like I say, I suspect other big companies have them too. I know other ones I've worked in have, but there's a women's network. There's I can't remember the name, but there's a network for kind of I can't remember what the title is, but like deaf, disabled, neurodivergent colleagues. There's all kinds of stuff going on, which I think is cool, and which is great, I think, probably for what goes on in the network, but also for the events that are held for other staff. Like, it's not just if you're in a network, you do things in a network. You might go to during Black History Month, for example, there was some events put on in like White City, which were organised by a staff network. And so different experiences for everybody, and opening out people's minds, which I think is a good thing. I think it's easy to get lost in a large organization, so I think that can help. Certainly things like we have a women in technology group, for example, which at least just gives people a place to ask questions they might not want to ask in a different kind of meeting, maybe. Or be in touch with colleagues who can maybe give a different perspective on something, or give some experience of something, which I think is a good thing.
Is everybody that works at ITV on a permanent basis, are they based in the UK? Do you have like get-togethers? Does everybody kind of have FaceTime with one another?
So that there are multiple locations in the UK, yes, but we also have ITV also owns tons of like ITV studios. So within ITV studios, there's lots of production companies. They're not necessarily, they could be quite small. They could be wherever in the UK. That's a slightly different side of things. In terms of the staff in the UK are mainly based in the kind of hub offices, and there are events to bring people together. It's a hybrid kind of working culture, but there are things that get put on in the offices or whatever else. Plus, it's nice to do your job from an office, I think, sometimes.
I agree.
To go somewhere. I've done what's now called hybrid since 2008, when I was pregnant with twins, and funnily enough, getting the tube was not high on my priority list towards the end of that. And so flipped to that, and then it obviously became normal post-COVID, which isn't really the way you want to change the world, but it did. So there's quite a mixed culture, but we had like there were 70th anniversary events, for example, in I think London, Leeds and Manchester. Lots of glitter balls, like lots of glitter balls.
Brilliant. I love it. What's slight diversion, what's clip sales?
Oh, pick up on that one, did you? So clip sales is, again, this is not unique to us. This anyone who owns a content library would have this, but where people might want to just use 10 seconds of something in the background when they're making another program, for example. So there could be, here's some examples of, and most, everyone from Disney to whoever will be selling clips of their content.
Right.
A couple of different ways they might be used. So internally, for example, obviously we have daytime shows, live daytime shows. If they are having a guest on, they might want, say they've got I don't know, Taylor Swift. Why she was the first that came to mind, but she was. Taylor Swift is a guest, let's say that morning. They might want a 30 or 25-second clip of her doing something else that we happen to have the rights to, right? So to play before she comes in or whatever. So that's a clip. You could have something like in what film was it? I think it was something like Aquaman. There's like a 10-second clip at some point that I think might be from a news program. Again, that production company buys the clip, the rights to use the clip from us, and can show it in that thing. So it could be 5 seconds, 1 second, 30 seconds, whatever, and it's clipped out, and they're allowed to use that one piece. You'll see it in like sometimes in dramas. I notice it on ITV dramas because they always have ITV news in the background if the news is on, and I'm like, but and you'll see it the same on other broadcasters may be available. Will always use their own news in the background or something like that. So it's that. Or if someone makes a documentary, if you make a documentary about the Beatles, you might want lots and lots and lots of different clips of interviews with them from the past, or concerts that were filmed, or them getting out of a car and loads of people screaming or whatever, because nobody had anything to do back then apart from do that kind of thing. No phones. And all of those are probably bought from different people and put together into that documentary.
Right, that makes sense.
It's a kind of just a kind of, I guess, an upsell from actually owning content, is you can obviously sell it on for use, but you can also, if you've got the rights to, then rights are so complicated, I can't even begin to tell you about that. Then you can sell on for use.
Okay, so besides the legacy content that we spoke about, which is obviously a huge project, what can we expect to see from content product excuse me, from ITV next year? Any exciting things coming up that you're allowed to talk about?
So in my bit, again, I can't speak for the whole of for the company, but in my bit, we're very much working on that kind of simplification and modernization of the supply chain. So we're working on where are there opportunities to automate things which at the moment might be not quite as automated as they should be? Where are there opportunities to systemize data that maybe at the moment has to be put into two different things, for example? can we get to a system where it's put in once and then it's just flowing through with some kind of QC along the way? It's very much a focus around that sort of thing, and just thinking about how can you have systems that can scale up, scale down without needing to change a whole bunch of stuff for that to happen, but things to be much more kind of configurable as they go through. That's probably our major focus in my little bit over the next year or so. I don't know, I haven't seen 2026 roadmap yet, but I'm sure somebody's going to ask me for one.
Yeah, yeah. Now that we're coming up to December, for
Oh,
sure.
definitely. Yeah. We're
Yeah.
in the world of Q1 planning.
Yeah, same. Well, Laura, look, this has been really, really cool. I always find it fascinating when I chat to somebody from a large organization like an ITV, for example. I just think the inner workings of big corporations like that, just fascinating. And to talk about women in tech and the Wonder Woman conference, obviously, is something that I'm quite passionate and keen to talk about and learn about. So, yeah, this has been really cool from a selfish point of view, but I'm sure that there'll be quite a few people that get in touch and maybe even reach out to you directly as well.
Yeah, and that's fine. Look, thanks for the opportunity. It's very much focused on, my world within a bigger world, but it's a good world to be in.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things happening, so it's really interesting. So I appreciate you, and yeah, thanks very much. Enjoy the weekend, I guess.
Thank you, I will.